what kind of options you have, because we keep hearing vegetable tan leathers, which is also confused with vegan leather at points, because some people refer it as veg tan. Welcome to the Leathertainment podcast, episode 4. In this one, we're going to talk about how leather is made, because most of us know, hopefully, leather comes from the animal and then we see the bag on the shelf, but most people don't know what happens in between, how it gets there. And it's a fascinating process. So we would like to give a little bit of light into that dark side of leather.
Yeah, and we are here in our laboratory where we test a lot of new chemicals and new ways of how to make leather and how to soften it and hair on, hair off. So there's as well different raw materials that we can use. And it's really fascinating to see how versatile leather is actually. So we know it only as a ready product, as a bag, as a shoe, as a jacket, or as a car seat or furniture, but we don't know really how it is processed and how much time it takes and how much knowledge is in there. So it's really amazing. And we are happy to be here with you today and look a little bit deeper into this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here. It's like the playground for me. I wish I could transmit the smell as well to the audience, but this is for me like reminding good times in Disneyland. It's almost like a mini tannery with small equipment that you can test stuff. But I think it's going to be easier if we break down the process of production for the audience to follow along. There's, I think, 3 key components that goes into making leather, which starts with the rawhide, the initial material that we're gonna build it on. And then the next phase, which is making that item, which is originally a trash, a byproduct of the meat industry, making it a stable fabric. Then the final step is the crafting of something, which is sky's the limit. Whatever you want to make with leather, you can. So let's start with the rawhide. There are some misconceptions around that as well, and how that rawhide gets into starting of this leather production process.
So first of all, you start into looking into what kind of product do I want to create at the end? Like, is it a bag? Is it a shoe? Is it a car seat? Is it a furniture? So there is where you start, like, which raw material is a perfect one for me? And raw material, we all think about cows probably or cattle, but there is much more. So everything that humans eat and we have a skin on this animal, this skin could be transformed into something that we call leather. And then it's interesting where is as well the difference between fur and leather. So this is where it starts. Animals that we eat are considered to be leather or be transformed into leather. And then fur is typically the animal that we breed specifically for the hair. So chinchilla, for example, would be one of the examples where we grow chinchillas particularly to capture the fur. Whereas then leather is from lamb, from sheep to goat, kangaroo, crocodile, whatever we eat, where we hunt these animals to as well control the amount of animals available in that species. These animals are then can be transformed into leather. And that is typically what we do. We don't want to trash those hides, but we want to make it something valuable and long lasting.
Absolutely. And that's a transforming process that's fascinating, but very long, and requires a lot of skills, machinery, equipment, and knowledge. In that process of stabilization, how can we explain it to someone who never seen a tannery before? What are the stages and what's being done to rawhide so it becomes a beautiful fabric at the end?
So typically you receive the hides in the tannery with the hair on. And that is where the process starts. And what we try to do as tanneries is as well to work wherever possible with hides coming directly from the slaughterhouse. The advantage is here that they were not stabilized with salt, for example, so they were not conserved, which immediately has an impact on our footprint. When we salt leathers to make it long lasting before going into the tannery, we increase the footprint of the leather making. So ideally, we use hides coming directly from the slaughterhouse and start there. So we would start with a skin which has still the hair on, and it can be, and that is a very challenging tanning method as well. We There are tanning methods where we want to maintain the hair on the leather. You know this maybe from leather jackets or from shoes where you still have the lamb skin, so the hair on the leather remains. So we still call this leather, but we want to maintain those hairs on the leather. And then typically for all other products where you don't find hair on leather, we go into a dehairing process.
That I think that's a good point, that where maybe we highlight the confusion one more time. Some people may think when they see the hair on a lambskin, it's a fur. It's not. It's just a decision made in the tanning process that they want to keep the sheep's wool on the skin while making it into a stable fabric so the jacket can have a little bit more insulation and cold protection purposes, or maybe style choice. But it's not a fur, it's not raised for its hair or leather. It's still the byproduct of the meat industry.
Correct. And that is something where now the fashion industry picking up on, because there is really this difference between fur and hair on leather, because the hair on leather is coming from animals that we eat in our own food chain. And there is amazing, beautiful animals around the world. And it's very interesting to see that there are animals which are only found in one particular region. Like Turkey has beautiful goats which have very long hair, which creates beautiful leather jackets, but it's not fur. And I think there is as well something that we need to learn as human society, that there are animals around the world that we eat for our own nutrition, but they have beautiful skins to be used, which are not fur.
Absolutely. I think it's going to help a lot of people think about that when they see a hair on jacket next time. We might immediately think, oh, it's a fur, this person is evil. Most of the jackets we see that has a hair on is not fur, actually. And so in that process of tanning, uh, in the industry, we separated into three sections, right? Like the beam house, where the cleaning happens, because rawhide is dirty in the beginning. It has all kind of elements on it, fats and hair, if you want to remove. Then there is this preservation part, which makes the leather stable material from a vulnerable protein. And then there's the last part, the dressing up, the makeup, the finish part. So let's say we decided to take the hair off, which most leathers are done that way. How does it go into the next step of stabilization?
So after the dehairing process, the leather is quite thick actually. And that's as well, when I started in the tanning business, I was astonished to see how thick
The cowhide.
the cowhide, for example, is after the tanning. And what I found really fascinating is that even there, the tanneries are considerate in not creating waste. Because when you want to have a shoe or a handbag or whatever kind of product out of this, you don't need this thick material.
You can't even use it.
You can't even use it because you can't run it through a sewing machine.
Right.
So you need to bring it down to a certain thickness. And they understood, or the tanneries understood many, many generations ago, that actually out of one hide you can make two. So we split, that is a technical term, we split the leather in two. So we have the part where the hair was on, and then we have the part which was connected to the meat. And this creates two. So you double the amount of availability, and it's all naturally grown. So that is really fascinating, that we can double the availability of material and then make usage out of it.
One leather becomes two.
Exactly.
In a different way. It's almost like you have a thick slice of bread and you cut it in half. Now you have two slices of
Correct.
bread. It's the
Yeah.
same technique. So, and then once you adjust your thickness to the levels, what kind of options do you have? Because we keep hearing vegetable tan leathers, which is also confused with vegan leather at points, because some people refer it as veg tan. And then we have chrome tanning. There's a lot of misknown things about chrome tanning, and there's a lot more new ways that we're trying to develop for tanning leathers again. What can we share about those parts?
So traditionally, or the oldest tanning method, I would just say, and we had it in one of our previous podcasts, is the chewing on leather, which is really very historic, and as well hanging it into the smoke of fire, for example, to conserve it. But then that was translated into the vegetable tanning, and there are still vegetable tanning hubs around the world where they specialized on the tanning with fruit, root, tree barks, etc. So all coming from regrowing resources. It has a lot of advantages, but as well limitations. So this leather tends to be quite stiff. So where we find it mainly is in horsery, so saddles, but as well of the dressing of the horses, and as well in boots and in shoes, where it's quite stiff in the shoe soles. It's thicker as well, this material typically. So the usage is quite limited. Another beautiful thing is most of us, we know this from our childhood, this leather, because when we went into a leather shop, there's a very specific smell. And this comes from these vegetable ingredients, which is then giving the smell to those leather. It's just beautiful. This is what we desire and we like it because it's a non-toxic smell. As humans, we understand this is a smell which is coming from nature.
It connects to us energetically. I think it's not a conscious thinking, but subconsciously we know this is a product of nature. Like you walk into a coffee shop and immediately that coffee smell
Yes.
appeals to you. Same
Correct.
thing with good leather.
Absolutely. Fully correct. So this leather, but this leather has as well limitations because it's naturally tanned. It's very sensitive to light. And we all know a very luxurious brand from Paris. They use this in the framing of the bags and for the handles. So when you buy this bag, typically the leather is very bright in color. It's almost sand color, but it darkens very quick under light. So you don't even need to touch it. It's just the light changing this. So many brands do not want this change of color that fast and that drastic because depending on what kind of environment you have around, the color is off then for what you want to achieve. So this is as well where this leather has a limited usage.
Especially in fashion, for example,
Yes.
if it's your purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And then about 100 years ago, we developed the so-called chrome tanning that you mentioned. The majority of leathers worldwide is tanned with chrome tanning. It's a very secure and good tanning process. What is important is that the tannery knows how to use it and how to fix it. So we use chrome 3. There's a lot of talk about what is chrome 3 and what is chrome 6, and that there is toxicity coming from chrome tanned leather. So that is something where the tanner needs to be very careful in how to fix the chrome tanning so that there is no oxidation of the chrome 3 that we use, which is a non-toxic chrome, into chrome 6, which is known as a toxic chrome. So that is something where the tanneries need to be carefully working. And that is as well now where the society, the brands, as well the tanneries looking to, do we still want to live with this risk? Or are we ready to shift to the next generation of tanning methods? So we see for the moment a chrome-free working group being founded, which is looking for industry partners to shift to chrome-free because they just want to eliminate the risk of this oxidation process. And now we see as well that there are new and more chrome-free tanning solutions being offered to the tanneries to not have any risk with the chrome tanning anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an entire world in itself. Again, every time we're trying to describe something, we go back to what are you gonna make with the leather. So the choice of the cleaning, hairing, dehairing, or the tanning method, it comes down to what's the end goal with leather. So it sounds like tanneries or the brands needs to start with the end in mind, down to choosing which animal to use as the rawhide, and then which tanning technique or finishing process to use. It's a fascinating operation that we never think about. So with all that tanning techniques, let's say we choose the right one, chrome, vegetable, or zoology, one of the new ones. We have a stable fabric, we colored it. What's next? We call that crust, almost like a pizza crust that doesn't have the toppings yet.
Yeah, so the tanning is the first big step after the deherring process. And then you have different colors after the tanning that you choose. So it would be blue if you choose a chrome tanning. It would be a very natural beige tone when you choose a vegetable tanning. It can be off-white if you choose a glutathione, another new chrome-free tanning method that we have around in 30, 40 years. And then it is really almost paper white when you tan with zeology tanning. And then comes the next step into the coloring process, because as well, depending on what product you want to create, you have already a color in mind. And that is where now another alchemy comes in, where the tanneries need to look into what kind of ingredients do I need to get to the color that the fashion brand, the car brand, the shoe brand wants to use for their product. Because what we want to do in leather is that we are as close in the leather color to the end product as possible.
So that process of coloring is also another mystery most people don't understand, because they see the red bag and it's like, how come the leather is red? So the dyeing process consists of two main stages. One in the crust, in the drums, with dyeing through the leather, through the cross section, and the final one is in the makeup level. So let's say we dyed the leather to the desired color in the drum and the crust, and what's next?
So that is as well something which was linked to tanneries. I grew up, as I mentioned in our podcast before, in a tannery town, and I remember that the river color was colorful, and we knew which color the tannery was doing that day. It was red or blue or green or whatever the color of the day was. Nowadays, the tanneries are asked to clean the water before then bringing it into the wastewater stream.
Thankfully.
And so that we don't have this anymore. But the coloring process is really very important. And then typically we apply an additional finish to it to protect the leather from damage. It's almost like an ice shield. When we have ice in winter, ice is as well creating something around the tree, and it's protecting it actually against the frost. And that is similar to what we do with leather. We give it a protective shield, and depending on how what kind of product you use, the shield is less thick or thicker, depending on how long lasting do you want to make the product as well, and what kind of environment you expose this product to. I was recently in a very hot country, and the leather needs to be more protected against the heat and more protected against the sun, as here in our northern hemisphere where I live, where we have more gray weather and more gray sky than the blue sky and the heat. So there's as well different challenges to leather, and there's different exposure of climate. So depending on this, you as well choose what can I do or what do I need to do to make this leather long lasting. And with this, I apply a certain amount of, we call it finish, or you talk about makeup, yeah. And that is exactly what it is. So we finish it, and it can typically we do a tone in tone. So we choose the same color as the leather has, so that in case that we damage it, that you don't see an irritation. Your eye is still reading it's red, but not white under this. Or you really by design want to make a contrast color. So in automotive, we used it sometimes that we had a red crust and then we had a black finish on top. And then we were perforating. So perforating is another technical term for punching holes into the leather. So car seats in the meanwhile have either a design feature with a perforation, so holes in the leather, or it's for ventilation. So for hot countries where it's getting really hot in the car and in the environment, you're happy that you get some air and on your body exposed by these ventilation from the seats, and where air is coming through those holes. And it can be a design item to have a contrast black to red, for example, and it's beautiful.
So there's so much goes into picking and choosing the process of tanning, finishing, depending on the design you have in mind, and color contrast, dual tones, or the properties of the climate or the usage of the item. It's fascinating. And the next question I have is, like, what kind of measures or accountabilities are in place in this production process? Because a lot of people may have these questions like how safe this production is for environment, for the workers. Like, what is leather industry doing to ensure it's as harmless as possible and to improve it to the next level every day?
Yeah, that's a very good question and important question. And that's a question which fortunately was as well picked up by NGO organizations, which have been founded already many years ago to look into this. And now they offer the possibility to tanneries, for example, but as well to brands and as well chemical suppliers to become part of this organization. So there is the most famous one is Leather Working Group. They monitor tanneries in regards to sustainability and what they do in their everyday business. So, and what is amazing about Leather Working Group, they have created standards and they have created audits. And so they come and visit your tannery, and then there is a protocol that you need to go through where they check on many different items in regards to water usage, water consumption, water recycling, use of chemicals. Are you using zero discharge of hazardous chemicals, chemistry, and what level are those chemicals? Where are your hides coming from? So the traceability of hides becomes a more and more important issue. And now we have deforestation law in Europe coming into place at the end of 2025, where we need to trace back the animal to the birthplace. And these things are becoming very important because there is a lot of misuse of other industries and raw material where it's coming from, and it's mislabeling, and then you don't know, you're losing the traceability. So Europe is trying to get a better control, and Leather Working Group is working with World Wildlife Fund on finding solutions. How can we do this? So I see that the leather industry is really taking a lead here compared to other industries, and as well showing how it can be done. And it's very good to see this. So we as well look into what can we do from a chemical side to become cleaner in our processes, in our making of, and what chemicals will we abandon in the short future and the near future, because they are not as toxic free as we want them to be.
Right. This is great because leather industry, unfortunately, not talking enough about telling the good story of leather, but the story is better because they're doing some self-imposed accountability measures like this, Leather Working Group. And this is not only the leather industry, it's the full ecosystem. Brands, I think, led the way to form this third-party organization. And now it's a very big leading organization, just spearheading all this sustainability efforts. So I'm glad we are bringing this to the attention of the public, because LWG is becoming more and more visible in the end product
Correct.
descriptions. I'm buying a lot of bags to cut up, and more descriptions I read, more LWG mentions I see recently, which makes me glad. But most people may not know what that means. It means the Leather Working Group ensuring all these safe processes in place, and it's ever improving. Like every 2 years they go to tanneries with increased requirements.
Yeah, and that is really important, that they really look into what is state of the art now. And with this, they change the requirements. So if you are a Leather Working Group Gold member this year, it doesn't automatically mean that in 2 years you will be, because if you don't follow the evolution of what is best practice, you will probably be ranked silver or even bronze if you don't pay attention. So that is really something as well, which is great for brands and as well for you as an end consumer to know that Leather Working Group is out there and working with tanneries, and that they give you transparency and helping you to make a right choice.
I think that's great that we mentioned Leather Working Group here, because it's one of the most important things we can communicate for end user to be cognizant of for making better choices going forward. And now we make the leather in a safe way. It's a fabric, it's not a usable product. What's next? What happens?
Yeah, so the next is that the leather goes wherever the leather is cut into parts, and cut into parts in regards to what the product will look like at the end. Is it a shoe? So you give it the shoe shapes, and then there's a design coming from the design department and saying this is a requirement. You always need to have a little bit more cut to the leather, because you need to put a seam line somewhere.
Right.
So and respect the seam line. And so you cut the leather, and then that is as well another thing where money can be made or money can be lost, depending on how strict you are in your requirements about because animals are living species as we are. So when you live, you might have had an accident, or you might scratch yourself somewhere and you have a mark, and it will
Disease.
be visible.
Yeah.
And some brands do allow this to be blended into their product, and some brands don't. And depending on this, you can cut more of the leather or you cut less of the leather. So with this you have more or less waste at the end after the cutting process. And it's interesting nowadays that finally we see as well a recycling industry being keen to take those wastes and make something new out of this. So we have this closing the loop for leather, and that the cutting leftovers are not wasted, but they are used. And so then they go into the sewing plant. And depending on what kind of product you need or you want to create, you combine leather with different materials. You need a carrier to give it the shape, the form that you want to. You might need to use heat, or you wetten the leather to bring it into the shape that you want, and then you dry it. So there is a lot of process work which is done. And when you then look into fashion, there are specialized companies which take the leather, they get the cutted part, and then they ennoble it with stitchings, with perforation design, with quiltings, with bring it into pleats, there's a lot of
interlocks.
weaving. I
Yeah.
mean, there is a lot of what you can do with leather. It's a very versatile material, and it allows a lot of color combinations, and you can really become extremely creative to then go into the item that you want to design.
It's literally the limit is your imagination.
Yes.
What you can make out of it and how you make it look like the
Yeah.
colors, the shapes. It's really fascinating. Just when we think about where leather goes once it's done, I've seen leathers as tiles. Like I've seen a tannery in Italy. They make vegetable tan leathers and they make it into tiles that goes into very high-end yachts,
Yes.
and they can walk on it 10 years, 20 years, that last as long as a wood will last as a tiling material. On the other hand, you can make a music instrument like a drum with leather, which people have been using for thousands of years, and
Correct.
everything in between. It's really amazing that we kind of got a glimpse of what's the process, the unthinked part of that leather's transformation from a trash into a very durable and beautiful accessory or item. Now, I think it's a good place to stop here for this episode, but I can't wait to start talking about the future of leather. What's going to change? What do we expect in the business of leather, and how it's going to impact our life?
Thank you.
Thank
It
you
was
very much.
Wonderful to talk about the making of leather, because this is really the key point. It's a core.
That makes us the most excited, I think, being here under the smell.
Yeah.
It was an amazing episode. Again, thank you, Florian.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Wolfgang. Thank you.